Trump is embroiled in two major rows spanning the Atlantic this lunchtime. Firstly, he's been accused of making racist remarks by the United Nations Human Rights Office. That's for questioning why the US needed immigrants from what he called shithole countries.
These are shocking and shameful comments from the President of the United States. I'm sorry, but there's no other word one can use but racist. You cannot dismiss entire countries and continents as shitholes, whose entire populations, who are not white, are therefore not welcome.
Well, in the last hour, Trump has denied using such strong language, but there's a second row also raging. He's announced he's not coming to the UK to open the new US Embassy building. The President tweeted, of course, "The reason I cancelled my trip to London is that I am not a big fan of the Obama administration having sold perhaps the best located and finest embassy in London for peanuts, only to build a new one in an off location for $1.2 billion. Bad deal. Wanted me to cut ribbon? No."
The reality's got nothing to do with the embassy, of course. I think it's because this White House insists on there not being any hostile demonstrations against Donald Trump when he travels abroad. Now, you go to China or Saudi Arabia or something like that, it's not that difficult. But nobody can guarantee that there would be no hostile demonstrations. And my hunch is that a combination of the White House preference in terms of the optics and probably a bit of Secret Service said the President, or the decision was taken one way or another, not to go ahead. I don't see this as a snub.
Let's speak to our political correspondent, Tom.
Ours is not a shithole country, neither is Haiti or any other country in distress. And it is extremely offensive for President Trump to make statements about other countries. It's not as if the United States doesn't have difficulties. There are millions of unemployed people in the US, millions of people who don't have healthcare services or access to education. And we would not deign to make comments as derogatory as that about any country.
Well, crashing on to the next row, Tom, what about this cancelled visit? Is it really about the building or is it about the UK-US relationship?
Well, clearly from the tweet, Donald Trump says it's about the building and about the fact that he doesn't want to give his blessing to what he calls a bad deal struck by Barack Obama. But the fact is, it's factually inaccurate to suggest that that decision to move the US Embassy from Grosvenor Square in Mayfair to Nine Elms here, which is near Vauxhall on the south bank of the River Thames, was entirely Mr. Obama's administration's decision. Because in fact, in 2008, in October, then US ambassador, the ambassador appointed by George W. Bush, announced that that move was to take place. He said that it had been a process that had been considered carefully, but that they had needed to expand and refurbish the embassy to meet new security requirements, and that simply wasn't possible in the Grosvenor Square location, and that they had selected Nine Elms to develop this new building, which will open to the public on the 16th of January. Also, Trump is not welcome here while he is pursuing such a divisive agenda. It seems he's finally got the message. Well, the predecessor to Sadiq Khan, Boris Johnson, who was of course Mayor of London before him, but now the Foreign Secretary, he also has been sending out messages today, and he responded to Sadiq Khan where he said, "The US is the biggest single investor in the UK, yet Khan and Corbyn seem determined to put this crucial relationship at risk. We will not allow US-UK relations to be endangered by some puffed up, pompous Popinjay in City Hall." That was the response by Boris Johnson, the Prime Minister's official spokesperson.
On air, but this is standard Trump operating procedure, really, isn't it? Say something outrageous, admit, deny that you ever said it, and the whole world's talking about you again.
Yeah, is it really that hard to believe? I'm not sure anymore. Many of the mornings I wake up in Washington, I have to tell you, Dominic, and half expect an apology from Donald Trump. This morning was another one of them. No apology. It's a denial from Trump this morning. He's been on Twitter, of course. His first tweet said this: the language used by me at the DACA meeting, which is the immigration meeting, was tough, but this wasn't the language used, he said. What was really tough was the outlandish proposal made, a big setback, referring there to the Democrat proposal on immigration. And then An even stronger denial in another tweet. He said this, never said anything derogatory about Haitians, other than Haiti is obviously a very poor and troubled country. Never said take them out, he says. Made up by Dems. I have a wonderful relationship with Haitians. Probably should record future meetings, he says. Unfortunately, no trust. Now, this is quite a big call from Donald Trump. In that meeting were several other congressmen, mainly Republicans, granted, but also a Democrat. It'll be very interesting today to hear what they've got to say, if anything. Also, the White House was read out this version of what Donald Trump said last night by a reporter from the Washington Post newspaper who broke this story. And the White House didn't deny it. So it's going to be an interesting day to see what happens to Donald Trump's denial. Meanwhile, the worldwide condemnation continues, particularly from the countries involved, Haiti, El Salvador, and Africa. This is what Jesse Duarte of the African National Congress in Johannesburg had to say just a short time ago. Strategy, it's upset an awful lot of people. It's going to be seen as racist, despite his denials. And it's going to inject real poison into the current debate here on immigration and probably make a deal that much less likely.
Of course, what his supporters don't want to be talking about or hearing about at the moment is the fact that President Trump is, at the same time in the background, decided to continue suspending sanctions on Iran, especially considering all he said about Iran recently with the protests there. We've seen him create diversions in the past. Do you think this might be what's going on here again?
Well, your guess is as good as mine. Look, he has a track record on this, and as you say, today is a very big day for Iran, and Donald Trump has to decide whether to reimpose sanctions on Iran. Now, many European leaders and the EU are urging him not to do that, but it may just be today that he doesn't reimpose full sanctions on Iran under the deal, the nuclear deal with Iran, but he instead announces American sanctions, separate sanctions, targeting Iranian businessmen, Iranian individuals, Iranian businesses themselves. And then he could say that, look, I'm still imposing sanctions on Iran, but he's not threatening the overall deal, which would make him very unpopular indeed with his allies. So this, yes, may be a distraction, but I do think also that we will get some announcement on Iran today. And I'm not convinced that he's going to scupper this deal in its entirety.
Meanwhile, we're all talking about his potty mouth. Mark, thank you very much. The president has caused more controversy today by announcing he's not